Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to rescue an animal and discovered that it could change your entire life forever? Emily Carter never imagined that a simple walk to the grocery store on a crisp autumn afternoon would lead her into a story far beyond anything she could have expected. The sun shone brightly off the asphalt, making the world glimmer as she loaded the last of her paper bags into the trunk of her sedan, anticipating the quiet comfort of home and a warm cup of tea. Yet, just as she closed the trunk, a movement caught her eye on the bed of a rusted pickup parked a few spaces over, partially hidden behind sacks of feed and loose straw. There, tucked in a small wire cage, was a tiny ball of white fluff pressed into the corner as if trying to disappear from the world. Her heart skipped a beat as she stepped closer, shading her eyes against the glaring sun, and met those piercing pale blue eyes that seemed too intense, too wary, and far too knowing for a mere domestic kitten. As the truck's owner returned, a weathered older man named John Miller, carrying a heavy sack of feed, he offered her a grave warning, explaining that the small creature was trouble, a predator that had been hunting the farm's chickens. The weight of his words and the kitten's quiet desperation struck Emily deeply, and before she could think twice, she found herself offering to take the tiny creature, whom she instinctively named Ghost. That moment marked the beginning of a bond so profound that nothing in her life would ever be the same. Have you ever held an animal in your arms and felt that it was watching you just as closely as you were watching it? Emily Carter soon realized that Ghost was no ordinary kitten. From the very first night in her apartment, the small white creature revealed a presence far larger than its size. Ghost did not curl into her lap and purr like the cats Emily had known. Instead, he observed her with an intensity that was both mesmerizing and unsettling, his icy blue eyes tracking every movement, as if cataloging the world around him. Nights were filled with a chaotic sort of companionship, where Ghost would leap from the highest points of the living room, his oversized paws landing silently on the carpet, flattening his body like a predator in the wild, and pounce on toys not for play, but for practice. Emily watched, fascinated and cautious, as he explored his new environment with a seriousness that made her heart race. She learned quickly that he needed raw meat, refusing kibble with a disdain that was almost comical if it were not so intimidating. And she adapted, preparing chicken and beef to satisfy his growing appetite. Friends and neighbors could not help but notice his size and his unusual features. One afternoon, a neighbor recoiled at the sight of his heavy paws and stubby tail, whispering about the strange animal Emily had brought home. But she defended him quietly, insisting that he was simply unique, perhaps a barn cat mix, and in time, she began to realize that he was evolving beyond anything she had anticipated. Emily researched tirelessly, discovering that Ghost's characteristics matched those of a bobcat, a wild animal whose instincts and needs were far beyond the care of a regular pet. And she absorbed information about bobcat behavior, their natural habitats, and the legal requirements in her state for keeping such an animal. She learned that bobcats imprint on humans when raised from a young age, forming bonds that make release into the wild nearly impossible and often fatal, and that their strength and territorial instincts could pose dangers if confined to a small living space. Despite this growing awareness, Emily's love for Ghost only deepened. She marveled at his peculiar expressions, the deep rumbling vibration he produced when content, and the gentle yet firm way he would nuzzle her or chew softly on her clothing. Every evening, she felt the gravity of their connection, the way he would curl against her back as she settled into the sofa, offering a sense of warmth and protection she had never known, and she began to understand the responsibility she had willingly accepted. Ghost's rapid growth and the intensity of his instincts made each day a challenge, but Emily adapted, learning to predict his movements, to provide enrichment that satisfied his predator instincts and to respect the boundaries he set, knowing that failure could have consequences for both of them. She kept detailed notes, studied behaviors, and prepared herself mentally for the inevitable confrontation with reality. She could not keep a bobcat in an apartment legally or safely. Yet the thought of letting Ghost go was unbearable. Each interaction reinforced the extraordinary bond between them, a mixture of fear, respect, and deep affection that left Emily both exhilarated and terrified. Her home had become a delicate ecosystem, one where she balanced the instincts of a wild creature with the need for safety, structure, and care, and she felt herself transformed by the intensity of this responsibility. Ghost was no longer a kitten. He was a being whose presence demanded attention, whose every action carried weight, and whose life had become inextricably linked to hers. Emily realized that her ordinary apartment and routines were no longer sufficient, that her life would need to expand to accommodate the truth of what she had rescued, and that the path ahead would require courage, ingenuity, and a willingness to confront challenges far beyond what she had imagined when she first saw those ice-blue eyes in the parking lot of a grocery store. Have you ever faced a moment when the creature you rescued from danger suddenly reveals a truth that shakes the very foundation of your life? Emily Carter's bond with Ghost, her strikingly white bobcat, had deepened over months of careful observation, love, and adjustment, yet nothing could have prepared her for the reality that awaited at the veterinary clinic. One early morning, noticing Ghost limping slightly on his rear leg, Emily gently coaxed him into a large dog crate, the weight of the growing animal testing her strength and resolve. The trip to Dr. Michael Thompson's office was tense. Ghost's presence caused other animals in the waiting room to tremble or hiss, his deep, low growl vibrating through the metal bars, a subtle warning of the power he contained. As Emily approached the exam room, the seasoned veterinarian paused in his steps, a hint of unease crossing his face, before he spoke softly, advising her not to open the crate. Emily tried to reassure him, explaining that Ghost was merely scared. But Dr. Thompson's quiet insistence carried authority born from decades of experience. As he examined the animal through the mesh, he finally removed his glasses, his expression shifting from professional curiosity to stunned recognition. Emily listened, heart pounding, as Dr. Thompson explained that Ghost was not a domestic cat at all, but a bobcat, likely a partial albino, a genetic anomaly whose rarity and strength placed him far outside the boundaries of ordinary pet ownership. Emily was warned that Ghost, even as a baby, was a dangerous wild animal and could not be kept in an apartment. She was both scared and sorry for him, knowing that he could not survive in the wild, but also that he could not be given somewhere else where he would be confined or kept as a pet. Emily's mind raced as she considered the options, the legal restrictions, the ethical dilemmas, and the practical realities of providing for such a magnificent creature. The vet explained the requirements for a licensed wildlife custodian, a Class 2 enclosure, outdoor secure fencing, dig barriers, double entry safety systems, and a minimum of 800 square feet, conditions impossible to meet in her current apartment. The tension between love and legality, instinct and responsibility, fear and determination created a moment of clarity for Emily. She understood that her ordinary life was over, and the path forward would demand courage, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. Ghost, lying quietly in the crate, seemed aware of the seriousness of the moment, his eyes meeting Emily's with a trust and expectation that made the stakes even higher. In that instant, Emily Carter knew that she would not abandon him, that she would find a way to provide for his needs, obey the law, and honor the extraordinary bond they shared. The realization was sobering yet inspiring. The journey ahead would test her limits, redefine her priorities, and ultimately reveal the depth of her love and resolve. What would you do if saving a life meant giving up everything you had? Emily Carter faced that impossible choice when she realized that providing Ghost, her extraordinary white bobcat, with a safe and legal home would require her to leave behind the comfort and security of the life she had built for herself. Determined not to surrender the animal she had raised from a kitten, Emily made the bold decision to sell her apartment, liquidate her furniture, and invest her retirement savings into a small, rundown property on 3 acres, far from neighbors, enough to meet zoning laws and create the space Ghost needed. The house was drafty, the roof leaked, and the plumbing groaned with age, but Emily barely noticed. Her focus was entirely on the backyard, where a secure sanctuary for a wild predator would take shape. She initially hired a contractor, but when funds ran low, she took matters into her own hands, learning to mix concrete for footings, stretch heavy-gauge chain link, and construct angled fencing to prevent escape. The work was grueling, leaving her hands blistered, her back aching, and her bank account dangerously low. Yet each strike of the hammer and each tightened bolt brought her closer to a dream that was both a lifeline for Ghost and a testament to her love. Night after night, Emily sat within the unfinished enclosure, Ghost at her side on a leash, and cried into his dense white fur, whispering apologies and promises as he pressed his head against her shoulder, offering comfort in return with deep, throaty chuffs. The deadline for inspection by Officer David Reed loomed, and Emily knew that failure meant Ghost would be taken to a zoo or sanctuary far away, trapped in concrete cages, unable to express the instincts that defined him. Desperate and running out of options, she reached out for help, posting the story of Ghost and their struggle on a local community forum, sharing images of the bobcat at play, showing the goofy side of his enormous paws and the gentle affection he offered her. She did not beg, she simply told the truth, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Neighbors, strangers, and even local businesses offered donations, materials, and labor. On the day before the inspection, volunteers arrived with tools, wood, and construction expertise, working alongside Emily in a modern-day barn raising that transformed the neglected backyard into a fully secure and enriched habitat. Children watched from a safe distance, neighbors contributed casseroles, and a retired welder fixed the latches on gates, creating a sanctuary that was not only safe and legal, but also stimulating and full of enrichment for Ghost. The work culminated in a structure with climbing platforms, hollow logs, a splash pool, and complex cedar structures that allowed the bobcat to express his natural behaviors. When Officer Reed arrived, he walked the perimeter, testing fences, checking double-entry vestibules, and inspecting the freezer stocked with appropriate meat. Finally, he looked at Emily, her hands clenched and knuckles white, and with a rare, genuine smile, stamped the approval for the enclosure. Emily felt a wave of relief, pride, and love, knowing that she had succeeded in giving Ghost the life he deserved, blending safety with freedom, and turning a desperate struggle into a triumph, fueled by compassion, determination, and the power of a bond few could comprehend. Have you ever wondered what it truly means to find your purpose? Emily Carter discovered hers not in the comfort of a carefully arranged apartment or the predictability of a quiet life, but in the wild, unpredictable world she had created for Ghost, the magnificent white bobcat whose presence had reshaped everything she knew. 3 years after building the sanctuary, The late afternoon light filtered softly through the tall pines, casting long, golden shadows across the grounds as Emily walked confidently down the gravel path, carrying a bucket of enrichment treats. Ghost, now a fully grown 35-pound specimen of muscle and instinct, moved fluidly within his habitat, his white coat glowing faintly in the sunlight, pale rosettes barely visible like clouds drifting across snow. As Emily approached, he stood on his hind legs, placing his massive paws against the mesh at eye level, and pressed his forehead gently against hers, a silent ritual they had shared since his kittenhood. Behind the secure fencing, other rescued animals thrived, each cared for by Emily and a community of volunteers inspired by her dedication. Her life had changed completely. There was no pristine condo, no untouched furniture, but instead there was purpose, connection, and the satisfaction of knowing that love and determination could create a world where wild instincts and human compassion coexisted. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold, Emily walked alongside Ghost, separated by mesh but bound by trust and devotion, listening to the night awakening around them and feeling, for the first time, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Ghost's soft chuffing vibrated against the fence, a gentle affirmation of the life they had built together, a life that was hard, unpredictable, and profoundly beautiful.